Shouts out to every independent artist out there. Shouts out to SoundCloud for holding me down. It's another one, baby!
On the 12th of February 2017, 23-year-old Chancellor Bennett, better known as Chance the Rapper, was awarded 3 Grammy Awards.
Let's go!
He stole the headlines even though major artists such as Adele and David Bowie had won more.
Cut him off last time.
This was because he was the first streaming-only artist to win a Grammy. He had never sold a single record, having declined several offers from major record labels over the previous 5 years. None of this would have been possible before the introduction of social media.
Yeah, come on now. Brakes on the bus, brakes on the car.
Hip-hop music originated in the 1970s in New York and was seen as a medium for marginalised young people from low-income black American communities to express their cultural experiences.
Here's Wonder Mike, Hank, and Master G, the Sugar Hill Gang.
Rapper's Delight by the Sugar Hill Gang was the first hip-hop record to break the top 40 of the US Billboard chart. The record was released by Sugar Hill Records, an independent record label which lasted 7 years before a deal with MCA Records led to the label's closure in 1986. Although the level of success varied, you can see even in the early stages of hip-hop's gradual takeover that there was a desire to be independent from the big corporations. With hip-hop arising from oppressed communities, it carried a rebellious undertone, which came to prominence in the mainstream during the late 80s and the early 90s, with artists such as NWA and A Tribe Called Quest. Q-Tip made the band's stance on record labels very clear when he raps on Check the Rhyme.
Industry rule number 4080, record company people are shady, so...
This rule became ingrained in the culture of hip-hop, but during this time period, there was simply no other choice but to work with record labels. Otherwise, music artists didn't have a platform for their music. Despite an initial lack of support from some radio stations, hip-hop became the top-selling music genre by 1999, selling 81 million CDs. However, between 2000 and 2005, sales dropped by 44%, and some industry experts reported that young people were fed up with the violence, degrading imagery and lyrics, whereas others identified that this genre was just as popular as ever, but the fans had found other means to access it. If fans wanted to see a music video, they had to watch MTV. If they wanted to listen to music legitimately, but didn't have a physical copy of a song or an album, they had to listen to the radio. A lot of the content music fans were consuming was being controlled by someone else. That was until the introduction of various social media platforms, in particular when it comes to independent music artists, YouTube, SoundCloud, Instagram and Twitter. YouTube has arguably had the biggest impact on independent music artists' triumph. Created in 2005, the website seemed to be an instant success, being bought out by Google a year later. YouTube impacted the music industry in a number of ways and initially discovered great talents like Justin Bieber and Ed Sheeran, who signed to record labels when the opportunity was given to them. This showed artists the potential YouTube had as a platform for up-and-coming musicians. The first hip-hop artist to really make an impact from making a music video go viral as an independent artist was Washington's Macklemore. He uploaded his hit song Thrift Shop on the 29th of August 2012, and the video now sits on well over 1 billion views. It reached the #1 spot in both the US and UK charts, all without the help of a record label. Before YouTube, it's unlikely that Macklemore would have been given the platform to release Thrift Shop, and the chances of that song being a success without a record label, before social media, are more or less non-existent. SoundCloud is similar to YouTube for independent artists in regard to how it offers a platform for them to distribute their music. Of course, it's just through the format of an MP3 file rather than a music video you'd see on YouTube. SoundCloud was a platform that Chance the Rapper made his start using and was where he initially broke through and captured the attention of many fans. He paved the way for many hip-hop artists who also made a name for themselves on the platform, such as Lil Uzi Vert, Russ and Lil Pump, who have since gone on to have successful music careers. Kinda. SoundCloud was particularly impactful in the rise of independent artists, as when it first started gaining popularity, users didn't need a record label or distributor to upload their music to the site, unlike other streaming services such as Apple Music and Spotify. With the majority of music consumption now being from streaming services, if SoundCloud and YouTube didn't provide platforms that were accessible for anyone, it's likely record labels would still have a tight grip on the music industry. The final two social media platforms we're going to look at are Twitter and Instagram. Unlike YouTube and SoundCloud, these are not platforms that help artists distribute their music, but they do have a huge impact on two key areas: fan culture and advertisement. Hip-hop as a genre is generally consumed by a younger audience. This made Instagram a social media that is used by 72% of teens and 71% of 18 to 24-year-olds, an ideal platform to market their music on. Twitter, similarly, is a very useful tool for musicians to market their music, in some ways more so than Instagram, as you can attach links to posts rather than just a bio link Instagram limits its users to. In a time previous to social media, marketing yourself to a youthful audience would have been done through particular magazines or shows on television. An independent artist having access to these platforms would have been extremely difficult, without the connections that a record label provides. However, with social media, musicians can make do without marketing on television and magazines. After exploring what the music industry was like before and after social media, it's clear to see how big of an impact it has made and how each platform has had their own unique influence on the change. The overriding theme throughout appeared to be access. Access to a platform that would gain you an audience. Now, with social media, anyone has that access, which has been key in the shift of power between record labels and independent artists.
And I'm being honest, for the kids that really want to, radio's respected. I respect radio.
The music industry can be broken into three key areas of income: recorded music, music licensing, and live music. Recorded music is what artists create in the studio and distribute to consumers, such as an album or a single. Music licensing is a focus on making sure the owners of copyrighted music, such as a composer or singer, are correctly compensated for the use of their work. Finally, live music is the production of live entertainment like concerts and tours. Before the internet was introduced and took over, the majority of the focus was on recorded music, as this was the most profitable. This is why artists would aspire to sign a record deal. The label would pay for a professional studio for recording sessions, and more importantly, enter the artist's music into the label's international distribution system, which you simply wouldn't have access to as an independent artist. Live music, meanwhile, was less of a priority for record companies. With the revenue stream of recording music being so profitable, live music was used more as a tool to advertise the music, with artists going on tours to promote their latest project. Since the introduction of the internet and services such as YouTube and SoundCloud offering platforms where consumers can upload and listen to music for free, record companies have struggled to control the distribution of their product. What they can control, however, is live performances. This is why live music has seen a surge in the past 15 years. The issue for labels now is that as long as an artist has a fan base and a demand, they can sell records and put on shows without the help of a record label. This is why social media has been such an important tool for artists, as it's a very useful indicator for telling whether there is a demand for their music. This power shift has been demonstrated by some of the biggest record labels in hip-hop being humiliated and duped by artists on their label. One of the biggest labels was, and still is, Def Jam Recordings, who have had colossal names such as Jay-Z and Kanye West signed to their roster.
Damn, Yeezy and Hov, where the hell you been?
Another huge name once on their roster was Frank Ocean. Ocean signed to the record label in 2012 and released his debut album Channel Orange that year. He was contracted to releasing one more album with Def Jam, which they would have to wait for until 2016. However, it was not the album they were expecting.
Frank Ocean setting the internet on fire. He just released this new visual album, Endless, exclusively on Apple Music.
Frank released two albums within days of each other. One was titled Endless, which was a video album and fulfilled his recording contract with Def Jam. A day later, he released Blonde, with Frank now an independent artist. This was the album that his fans had been waiting for, rendering Endless more or less irrelevant when it comes to consumer interest. The elaborate ploy was a great financial success for Ocean, as he made an estimated $1.8 million from Blonde in just the first week, as opposed to the estimated $383,000 he would have made if he had released the project under Def Jam Recordings. This was, of course, a big decision for Frank to make, as performing a stunt like this would have burned a lot of bridges for him within the industry and could potentially come back to haunt him. However, The mysterious persona he has created for himself seems to have generated a lot of interest and demand for his music, which is made clear on social media. This was one of the first times within R&B/hip hop that an artist had managed to finesse a record label rather than it being the other way around, with labels often taking advantage of up-and-coming artists that will sign any contract that is put in front of them. A common theme I found that caused a lot of frustration for artists was the 360 deal.
Are you in a 360? I don't know.
No, don't tell me you don't know. If you don't know you're in a 360, you're in a 360.
This entitles record labels to a certain percentage of anything the musician creatively monetizes. One hip-hop artist that became particularly frustrated with their 360 deal was Wiz Khalifa. In 2016, he filed a lawsuit against a former manager of his in an attempt to get himself out of the contractual situation he was in. Khalifa signed the contract when he was 16 and claims he wasn't advised of alternative options that would have been more beneficial to him. Now Wiz Khalifa runs his own independent record label known as Taylor Gang Records. It's not only being financially beneficial, shows his distrust for large corporate record labels that have taken advantage of him. Whilst he isn't an independent artist, this case shows the shift in power from label to artist, as Wiz Khalifa didn't have to just settle for the situation he was in, and was able to create his own label, which he has full control over. The biggest example of a hip-hop artist proving that record labels were no longer an essential component of the music industry is the success of Chance the Rapper. When Chance released his second mixtape, Acid Rap, in 2013, it elevated his career to a new level, and record labels began swarming towards him in an attempt to attain his signature. Chance turned down every offer that came his way and remained independent. The decision at the time was a brave one. It was rare to see an up-and-coming rapper turn down multi-million-dollar contracts from the biggest labels in the industry, but Chance valued his independence too much.
But they own your voice in terms of like your old recordings and how you pay your bills and how you ask for more advances and how you ask to be put on tours and how you ask to be put on radio to promote your single. 2016 was a significant year for Chance, as he played a big role in the release of Kanye West's The Life of Pablo, and in that same year, released his highly anticipated third mixtape, Coloring Book. This project again elevated his career to the next level. When the 2017 Grammy nominations were revealed, they announced a rule change that allowed streaming-only albums to be eligible to win the most prestigious award in music, with Coloring Book then going on to become the first streaming-only album to win a Grammy.
And the Grammy goes to Chance the Rapper!
This was the crowning moment for independent artists. Chance the Rapper had proven that you can make it to the top without a record label, building his audience through social media platforms and then transcending those platforms and moving into the mainstream.
I'm on your ass.
Drake.
Oh my God, that was yours.
This moment is key in showing the shift in power. Record labels ran the music industry as a result of artists being dependent on their services. But the amazing success Chance managed to obtain on his own opened the eyes of many rising artists that they can pave their own way. If artists don't need record labels to be successful, then the labels are not the ones with the power. Whilst artists now don't necessarily need record labels to be successful, as Chance the Rapper proved, it doesn't mean they're no longer useful. The biggest pro would be the financial backing you get when signing to a label. Of course, when you're independent, your career will have to fund itself. Therefore, if a project released by an independent artist doesn't perform well, then it's the artist's bank account that is harmed rather than a label's. The limited financial risk can appeal to a lot of artists. However, the potential for financial gain as an independent artist can be far greater. And with the rise of social media, it is vital now more than ever to create a brand that fans can buy into and support.
I can't even pronounce nothing past that for safety.
Social media has spawned an industry full of people who have turned themselves into a brand, funding a lot of success and financial gain. This has crossed over into the music industry and hip-hop too. In the current digital age, it can be very important for some artists. There are hip-hop artists who have enormous fan bases but do not need to be active on social media to help support the release of their projects. For example, Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole, who are right at the very top of the genre, lead quite elusive lives and aren't constantly posting on social media, yet always perform well when releasing a project. However, artists such as 6ix9ine and Cardi B created a following on social media before their music careers, constantly posting on social media to keep themselves relevant and therefore keep fans interested in what they have to say on their music. Whilst both these artists are signed to record labels, the fact they had a fan base before even signing to a label showcases the impact social media has had. In 2012, there were 6 times the number of independent artists that there were in 2003, many of those being in hip-hop. With this increase in the number of independent artists, there has been a common theme of said artists making their independence a large part of their brand, none more so than Chance the Rapper.
This is my part, nobody else speak.
As previously mentioned, Chancellor Bennett has been a pioneer for independent artists in hip-hop and the music industry as a whole. He touches on this in his lyrics on a number of songs. On the track Ultralight Beam, there is a line from Chance saying, Harriet Tubman was an American born into slavery who ran rescue missions to guide slaves to their freedom. Chance, in this instance, is likening himself to Tubman as he is guiding young artists to their freedom in the music industry. He has created a path for others to follow so they don't have to sign a record deal that takes away not only their creative freedom, but limit their financial freedom too. He backs this up on his own track, Blessings, from the Grammy Award-winning colouring book, with a line stating, I don't make songs for free, I make them for freedom. It's this identity he has formed that's contributed to independence being a big part of his brand. A brand can often be seen as just a logo, but it's much more than that. It's the identity that an artist holds, ranging from what they stand for to what they wear. Essentially, it is how consumers view an artist. On his song Blessings, he claims to be the people's champ. By giving himself this title, it elevates his status above his peers and gives the people, also known as the consumers, something to buy into. Chance could be the people's champ for a number of reasons, such as his charity work for his hometown, but his independence definitely plays a key factor. The independent identity and his attitude towards record labels can be seen as fighting against the system, as he has taken on the big corporate companies that have tried to get in his way and came out on top. In 2015, the late great Prince was being interviewed about an upcoming project. He released the album exclusively on Tidal. He stated in the interview, record contracts are just like, I'm going to say the word, slavery. This suggests the oppressive nature of being signed to a record label, which is supported by the Chance lyric previously mentioned, likening himself to Harriet Tubman. Hip-hop since the very beginning was served as an outlet for oppressed cultures to have a voice. We saw in the late 1980s and throughout the 90s the impact of artists such as Public Enemy and Tupac with socially conscious rap, gaining extensive support from Black American communities. So it makes sense that hip-hop fans would be more inclined to support artists that are independent as they are fighting oppression in their own way in the battle against record labels.
Hated to love it, the underdogs on top, and I'm gonna shine, homie, until my heart stops.
There's been a considerable amount of evidence that we as humans love to support the underdog, with one study showing 88.1% of people rooting for the underdog in a hypothetical situation. There are a number of theories on why we, as a majority, have a natural desire to see the underdog come out on top. Psychologists have found a common theme that humans enjoy success that is unexpected more so than when they do expect it. Similarly, we are hurt more by a failure that we aren't expecting. Therefore, when supporting the weaker party, if they fail to come out the victor, you aren't left with that feeling of disappointment. Another theory put forward is that people's support for an underdog is an expression of schadenfreude. This is the feeling of pleasure or satisfaction when something bad happens to someone else. This theory in particular could be applied to independent artists competing with record labels. The labels are so dominant in the music industry and make up so much of the market that when fans see an independent artist get one over on them like Frank Ocean and Chance the Rapper did, it could potentially trigger that feeling of schadenfreude, whether it be conscious or subconscious. This could help explain why a number of hip-hop artists have claimed the title of independence while secretly signing record deals. Hip-hop artist Russ claimed in 2017 that there are an increasing number of artists that are signed to major labels but pretending to be independent. Russ is one of the artists on a growing list of musicians who found success and built a fan base on SoundCloud. He worked tirelessly on creating music and was very proud of his independent status before signing a deal with Columbia Records. It was once he was in and around the label environment that he was exposed to the deceptive artists that were signing deals behind closed doors and then announcing it 8 months later. Russ was particularly offended by this as he felt artists had to earn that title. He had worked for 10 years as an independent artist, writing, producing, engineering and mastering his own music in an attempt to make a career out of his passion. And with enough perseverance and consistency, he managed to do so. Whilst other artists are claiming the title but have the backing of a huge corporation, getting support that Russ didn't have the luxury of. He said when being interviewed, "They're lying to the people. They're using the narrative of someone like me to try and get fans. Fans want to root for the underdog. That's what hip hop is about." This shows why independence has become a part of many artists' brand, as there appears to be a lot of value in being seen as an underdog, especially if you're trying to break into the industry. However, if artists are secretively signing with major labels, whilst they may initially have an advantage over an artist that is actually independent, there is a possibility the deal they're signing will hold them back in the future. This is why following the path of an artist such as Russ should be of a high priority for up-and-coming artists. He could have signed a record deal much earlier in his career, but instead focused on getting himself to a position in which he had leverage over the record labels trying to sign him. By building up his audience via social media and selling out tours without being signed, he put himself in a position of power over the label and now has a 50% profit split with Columbia Records. Russ sees it more as a partnership, and the split in profit would suggest that. This demonstrates how the scales of power have balanced with the use of social media, and while Russ didn't remain independent, the fact he was able to secure such a deal implies that the record label needed him more than he needed them.
People keep talking, I just keep winning.
I think what we can learn from Russ and Chance is that using independence as a brand has become a common theme in hip-hop, as it can be very useful in growing an audience as independent artists are seen as the underdog in the industry. However, you can only be the underdog for so long, and when you reach the level that Russ got to, you're no longer the underdog. Chance the Rapper, on the other hand, who has surpassed even the level Russ got to, has remained unsigned and is still using that as an area of his brand. He may see more value in maintaining the independent brand, as he is the self-proclaimed people's champ and doesn't want to lose ownership of his voice, which could potentially happen once aligning himself with big corporations.
Chance the Rapper, hands up!
Thanks for coming, guys.
So the video you've just watched is my dissertation turned into a video essay, and I started writing that back in 2019. So that's why there's no mention of TikTok, and some of it may seem a bit dated, but I hope you could still take something from the video. I think there is a lot to learn for artists within it, and particularly independent artists. I wanted to film a conclusion separate to the one I wrote back then, because some of the things I said I don't necessarily agree with now. Like, one of the things I said in my original conclusion was that I don't see any reason why an independent artist can't compete with an artist on a record label. And now, working in the music industry, I'm not sure I agree with that, and I see a lot of the benefits that being on a label does come with. Even though the points against the labels that I make in the video, I do think can still stand. I think what's happened since, artist power has definitely increased in the past 5-10 years, and labels haven't been able to get away with the same shady stuff that they did back in the day. And whilst my position's changed on that, I also said in my original conclusion that with social media now, no matter what industry you're in, whether you're an artist, whether you're a creator, whatever it is, if you have enough skill, enough hard work, and enough consistency, that anything's possible. And I think that was the biggest takeaway. Artists like Chance, that although since I wrote it, he released The Big Day and his career's not gone the way it looked like it was going to go, I still find him someone that's very inspiring and really paved a way and showed that you don't necessarily need the backing of a big corporation to become a success in the music industry. And I still think, regardless of how his career's gone, there's a lot to take from that. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you could take something away from the video. If you did like it, then please leave a like. If you want to see more, then do subscribe. I've been Scott. Thank you for watching.
I'm a four-door passenger, TFL savage, bomb the late night train, show my face to the camera, blue face cause I'm cold, listen I'm a ravager, cleaning up the tape G, I've been working not a janitor.